Here we are, fifth consecutive year that I've called down fire from heaven. Last year, I made the prediction that in 2024, the number of rockets fired into Israel when Mars will be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between April 12, 2024 and June 25th, 2024 would exceed the amount of rockets fired at any other point during the year. And that's exactly what happened thus far. In 2024, starting in January, we see that the number of rockets fired from Gaza and from Lebanon were roughly 691. In February, the number was 699 rockets that were fired from Lebanon and Gaza. In March, that number went up to 850. And in April, when Mars had gone within 30 degrees of the lunar node on April 12th, the number began to rise significantly. On April 13th, Iran launched an unprecedented attack against the state of Israel, firing over 350 missiles and drones in what would be the largest attack carried out by Iran in its history. It was also the largest drone attack carried out by any military. So that's how the phase started off, and throughout the phase of Mars being within 30 degrees of the lunar node between April 12th and June 25th, Hezbollah and Hamas continued to launch significant number of rockets. In April, the number of rockets fired at Israel from Gaza, from Lebanon, and from Iran totaled a little over 1,000. Which in itself was the highest amount of rockets fired at any month in the year 2024. The number of rockets into Israel continued to increase. In May, the total number of rockets fired ended up being close to 1,500. And in June, the same thing. The number of rocket attacks continued. In June, we'll end up being close to 1,000. We'll end up seeing close to 1,000 rockets being fired into Israel. But overall, in the Mars within 30 degrees of the lunar node phase in 2024, between April 12th and June 25th, the overall number of rockets fired will total around a little over 3,000. And that's going to be the highest number thus far in the year. That's going to be the highest number of rockets fired thus far relative to any other point in the year. So this is the fifth consecutive year that I have been accurate in predicting when the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur. Back in 2019, I had predicted that in 2020, the concentration of rocket fire into Israel between January 15th, 2020 and April 3rd, 2020, when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node, would exceed the amount of rockets fired at any other point during the year. And that's exactly what happened. Back in February of 2020, well over 100 rockets were fired at Israel, and that number turned out to be higher. That number turned out to be the highest compared to any other point in the year. In 2021, I did the same thing again, predicting that the concentration of rocket fire between February 9th, 2021 and May 13th, 2021, when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node, would exceed the amount of rockets fired at any other point during the year. And that turned out to be the case. That year, in May, maybe a couple days before the end of that Mars lunar node phase, Hamas had launched well over 4,000 rockets at the state of Israel. I then made the prediction for a third consecutive year, predicting that well in advance that between June 22nd, 2022 and September 19th, 2022, when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node, the concentration of rocket fire into Israel during that time would exceed the amount of rocket fire at any other time during the year. And that turned out to be the case because in August, Islamic Jihad fired around 1,100 rockets at the state of Israel. That number exceeded the amount fired at any other time in the year 2022. And then again, in my most ominous prediction, in 2023, I predicted that the concentration of rocket fire would occur. I predicted that the highest concentration of rocket fire against Israel would occur when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node between August 24th, 2023 and November 15th, 2023. And of course, that turned out to be accurate because Hamas launched an unprecedented terror attack against Israel, killing 1,400 Israeli civilians and firing close to 10,000 rockets in that phase alone. And of course, that number exceeded the amount fired at any other point in the year 2023. Now, after having made these accurate predictions, I thought that would be enough to convey the message that I was trying to send as a prophet of Satan, explaining that, Satan is behind all of this. He is using Mars as a vehicle to influence the enemies of Israel to attack Israel and spread anti-Semitism. So I went on to explain that Satan is willing to make a deal, that he will back off, he will remove his influence from the enemies of Israel and compel them to attack Israel less if people on earth would acknowledge Satan, acknowledge his existence in the form of building some effigy, some type of effigy or some type of image, but through the prism of Mars, who I call a Morris in this generation. So after October 7th and after that phase of horror carried out by Hamas against Israel, I went on video and I explained that if you build an image of a Morris, that the acceleration of violence when Mars would be within 30 degrees of the lunar node would begin to decline. But no one listened. It seems like I'm the only one talking about a Morris, trying to put an image together. But that's not what's part of the deal. The people, you, the witnesses, the earth dwellers, you have to carry out your end of the agreement. So fast forward to 2024, after having warned people that if they did not make this image to a Mars, that the attacks against Israel will continue to accelerate when Mars will be within 30 degrees of the lunar node. So in 2024, Mars went within 30 degrees of the lunar node between April 12th and June 25th. And we see that during this phase, not only did Hezbollah from Lebanon and Iran carried out unprecedented attacks against Israel, but anti-Semitism began to spread all over the world. And of course, one can point out the atrocities carried out by Israel against the Palestinians as the impetus for all of that. But let me make it clear that Satan's goal is not to just influence the enemies of Israel to carry out attacks against the Jews, against Israelis, and attacks against the state of Israel. It's also to compel Israel to respond in a very disproportionate way and carry out and exacerbate the amount of atrocities carried out when Mars is within 30 degrees of the lunar node. This is all part of Satan's plan. So in saying this, I'll reiterate again, please make an image to a Mars. Give Satan what he wants. Otherwise, Satan is going to continue to use Mars as a vehicle to influence attacks and violence and terrorism against Israel, leading to a disproportionate Israeli response, which will just exacerbate the amount of violence in the region and eventually all over the world. So for anyone out there, if you have any concern for Israel's existence as a state, you will build this image. That country, Israel, is surrounded by satanic Mars-influenced forces, and the God of Abraham is not coming to save them. He has abandoned Israel before, and he will do it again. So listen up. You will build this image of a Mars, and you will corroborate the Mars 360 religious and social system, where no one can buy or sell unless he's identified himself with the Mars-influenced personality characteristics laid out in that system. You have until June 5th, 2025 to make this happen. If you refuse, Mars launches the rockets. If you laugh, Mars launches the rocket. You have until June 5th, 2025 to arrange the construction of a Mars. Mars is aware of the God of Abraham. You know, and I know, after having seen what Mars is capable of, that the God of Abraham doesn't stand a chance. This is another warning. If there is no Mars, if there is no construction of a Mars, if there is no making the image of a Mars, then expect the highest concentration of rocket fire to occur in 2025 between June 5th, 2025 and September 4th, 2025, when Mars will be within 30 degrees of the lunar node. This is the 6th consecutive year that I'm calling down fire from heaven. This is Anthony of Boston, out.